Well, I hope you're ready for the next episode. I got a chance today to speak with Tim Porter, owner, founder of Appddiction. It's a really great conversation. Tim and I talked about leadership. We talked about Doge and kind of government efficiency and the contractor's role. And Tim even revealed a few things that he said only 2 or 3 people knew. And now we all get to hear it. A really interesting part of the journey for him. Thank you, Tim, for doing this episode today. It was great. It was great talking to you. I'm here with Tim Porter, owner of Appddiction, and I'm Bill Williams, of course. We're going to do the next episode of our road trip journey, talking to CEOs. Tim and I got to connect. We're going to do this one on Teams, see how this goes today. So if I can just start, Tim, tell us a little bit about your background, your story, maybe something fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So, no, thank you so much, Bill, for the opportunity. A little bit about myself. I'm originally from Vicksburg, Mississippi. And my background, I did 10 years in the military, in the Army, jumping out of airplanes, all that hula stuff. And then in 98, I was involved in a bomb explosion. Because my job in the military, I was a 12 Bravo. We did a lot of explosive stuff, and I always like to say I kind of blew up the wrong thing, right? and so the military brought me to San Antonio at the time because San Antonio had the best hand surgeons in the military from Korea. So came to San Antonio, had some hand surgeries, and then I basically medically retired from the Army. And then in San Antonio, my battle buddy in the military, he was from Texas, and he always told me about Texas. And I'm like, well, damn, I'm here. I might as well enjoy it, right? So then I worked at Dell Computers for 2 years, commuting back and forth. Then I got a job at the San Antonio Express News. I was there for about 9 years. And then I became an adjunct professor at the University of Incarnate Word. And then when the first iPhone came out, I taught myself how to develop apps. And that's when Appddiction Studio basically started coming to fruition, right? Because I taught myself how to develop apps in over like 2 summers of just really focusing on coding and watching videos and watching a lot of books. And I never forget, the first app that I created was a simple app. It was called Appddiction, because I just wanted to be able to have an app where my son could just click and it would be like, hey, he can learn his alphabets, right? And because I was, my thing at the time was, what's the smallest thing I can do to make sure that I can really do what my big plan is, right? And when I was able to build that app BC and put it on the App Store, I'm like, I'm onto something, right? So that's kind of how it started. And then once I started teaching at the university and they knew that I had, created apps and I'm building this app company, then basically at the time, the president, Dr. Anisa, he was like, hey, won't you start the first app program at the University of Incarnate Word and teach our students how to develop apps? And I'm like, oh, okay, that'd be really cool. So I was able to basically teach for an hour in the morning and run my company the rest of the day. And then I saw on the news a kid had committed suicide because of bullying. And that's when we created an app called Stop Bullies that went basically globally. And that's when we really kind of hit, I would like to say, the home run, right? We got put in a whole lot of schools. And that's where the name came from, because at the time I'm like, every kid is going to have a smartphone and everybody's going to be addicted to apps. So with Appddiction, it's the whole addiction.
I never knew that.
Scene.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. And so something fun about myself, as an entrepreneur, you put in a lot of work, right? You put in a lot of work to build your company. and I've put in, countless hours. But I think now the most fun thing that I'm able to do is spend time with my son now because he's 14, he's growing up, he's at all of these camps and different type things, and having the flexibility to be able to do that. I think that's the most fun thing for me now, knowing the countless hours that I had to put in, sleeping in the office, and all of those things to build something sustainable.
So I got to ask, is Stop Bullies still a thing?
No, we sold it, right? So we
Oh,
were
okay.
the first 4 years we were strictly mobile app development company, and we built, I mean, so many mobile apps for schools, and like in San Antonio, we were the company who built the first transit app for Via Metro, because I had went to a conference up in DC, and I was looking at their transit app, and I never forget, I came back to San Antonio, and Tony Cade was the CIO at the time at Via Metro, and I went over there and I got a meeting with him, and I was like, "Why don't you guys have a transit app?" And he was like, "We never thought about that." And he was like, "You got an idea?" And I was like, "Absolutely." Right. So we kind of put this prototype together for him, and we pitched it to him. He's like, "Oh, wow, that's pretty cool." And he was like, "So how much is it going to cost though?" And I said, "Well, it's going to cost a pretty penny." And he says, "Well, we're going to have to put that out to RFP." So they put out the RFP, and we were able to win the contract. So we were the company who built their first transit app. You can see the bus coming in real time, and all of those different type things.
Now, what was that organization? Was that a state? Which one was that?
Yeah, it's a state, the state transit agency. It's called
State.
Via
Okay.
Metro. Yeah,
Okay. Okay. So
yeah.
So you've got we didn't mention this, but we're partners on some work together for the federal government. How did you get into all the federal stuff then? Because you got a good sized federal company. You're obviously doing well there. So how did you make that transition?
Yeah. So the way I made the transition into the federal space, because, like I say, like the first 4 years, we were strictly mobile app development company, right? Doing the commercial and those different type things. And then one day somebody told me, "Tim, you're a veteran. You should do business with the government." And I'm like, "Well, what's that?" Right. And
Yeah.
even though I was military, right? When I was military, I jumped out of airplanes. I'm in the field, all that hoo stuff. And I'll be honest, at the time when I was in the military, I thought everybody was like government people, you know, like in uniform like me, but behind the scenes and stuff, right? And when I learned that really the government is kind of helped run by small, medium, and large businesses, that really opened up my mind. And I was like, "Oh, I never knew that." And so, you have these different groups who help veterans and different business owners, get certified in different things with the government. So I went to, I think it was called the PTAC at the time. I can't remember what the PTAC stand for, but I went to the PTAC, and I was like, "Hey, I want to do business with the government. I'm a veteran." And so they helped me get started, helped me get certified, and all of those things. So that's how I got into the government space, because when somebody told me, "You're a veteran, you can do business with the government," I went to PTAC, and they kind of helped guide me on what I needed to do there.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges? I happen to be particularly interested in the federal GovCon part of getting into it, but I'm also interested in do you I tried to do some commercial. We're a federal company. It was hard to do both. Like, it's different mindsets and stuff. I'm curious. As a second question is how do you still do any commercial? How did you transition from commercial to federal, and what were the challenges?
So
Yeah.
all of that.
So
I got a bunch of questions.
yeah, no, that's beautiful. So we still do both, right? And the way we were able to transition from, like I say, from commercial to government is commercial looked at it from a state agency perspective of how are you certified? And so they have like small business, disadvantaged business, those different type things the state governments look at, right? And long as you're certified, you can compete on those RFPs and different things like that. So we were just a regular small business from the state local government perspective, right? And they also have, you can be a veteran-owned business. There's different certifications you can do to be able to compete at the state government level. So we, with the via transit opportunity that was under small business and veteran-owned small business. So we were able to do that. And then when, like I say, when someone started telling me about the federal government and, oh, you're a veteran and you're a service-able veteran and X, Y, and Z, I'm like, oh, okay. So for me, it was a seamless transition because we really started with the VA because, someone educated me to say, hey, the VA, they have opportunities where they do business strictly with veterans. And I was like, oh, okay, wow, that's very interesting, right? So then when we got into the government space and I started understanding, how big the government was, that really, really expanded my mindset and the opportunities. So now I would say, 70% of our business is federal government and 30% is commercial, right? And the reason why we still do both is I'm big on diversification, right? You want to be able to be flexible and all of those different type things. But I would say the largest opportunities are in the federal government space, though. And what inspired me to get there, I tell you. So my journey is, I worked in the corporate world, military, education, all of that good stuff. But I've always been self-taught in technology. And so when I got out of the military, I was always like, well, what am I going to do, right? And I was telling my son this on the other day on our trip, and so like I say, I had some surgeries, right? And so I had to go do a typing test, and I tell him I never forget the building where I went to, right? And I went in there, and I could tell that immediately they looked at me like, what is this guy going to be able to do? He don't have all his fingers, right? And I went in there and I knew I was going to pass the typing test, right? I passed it and I came out and you could tell they looked at me like he passed the typing test, right? And they said, sir, you passed. And I balled up the paper and I said, no shit. And I said, you should never judge a book by its cover. And that's always been my motivation, right? And I just told my son this just a day. It like sticks with me. That's my compelling motivation for every single day I get up, because sometimes we look at people and we're like, what can they really do, right? So that really helped start my entrepreneurial journey. And then I never forget, the first company I started though failed miserably because so at the newspaper, I'm doing network, desktop support. By the time I left, I was the director and everything. But me and my buddy, we was like, hey, we should start a company, because Dell Computers was big at the time. We should start a company that helped people fix their computers. So the first company I started was called PC Alternative, and we would go fix people computers and all of that stuff, right? Well, that taught me not to go in business with your buddies, though, because here I am working and my buddy, he was like on the phone the whole time. And I'm like, dude, you can't be talking to girls the whole time. We got to make some money, right? So we was in business for probably like 6 months and I lost a lot of money. And I was like, no, I can't do this anymore. So that was like my first glimpse into entrepreneurship.
That's a good one. I wanted to move next to a little bit discussion about leadership and management. We can go anywhere we want with this, but kind of the idea is to talk about how you lead your company and some of your challenges. I love funny stories too. So you told a good one a few minutes ago about the typing test and kind of obviously that was a big deal because I have a couple sons as well. And when you tell them a life lesson like that was a life lesson, right? So, and you apply it. So, I'd love to hear how you apply that to running your business, leadership, management, any of that.
Yeah. And so I think what the military, what I was blessed to get in the military was the leading by example, right? So everything I do in business now in my company, I like to lead by example and do it first and show my people that, hey, at the end of the day, before I ask you to do something, I can also show you, X, Y, and Z, because I'm really big on, from an entrepreneur standpoint, I'm very big on, as an entrepreneur, you wear many, many hats, and you got to be able to, provide that overall leadership to almost any group, any team member in your company and everything, right? And so, the typing example was just one. I give you another big thing that I learned about, leadership and leading by example in those different type things, right? So early on, we won a contract, and um and I went and hired this person who had this big certification that we needed, right? But then it hit me to where if they leave, that certifications leave with them. And I was very early in my business, and we had just one. I want to say this was our first or second. No, this was our second government contract, right? And so I listened to a lot of people, and then I was like, I need to go get that cert myself, because me as the leader of the company, if when I have it, I'm never leaving. It's always going to stick with me, right? And so I tell entrepreneurs today, you should always invest in yourself. So I went and invested the time, got that certification, and that certification honestly took us from like 4 million to $20 million company. And I tell people is only because my mindset as being a leader, leading by example, and when you invest in yourself as a leader, especially you're the company, that motivates other people, your people in your leadership too, to see that, wow, if the boss is doing it, I have to do it too. And if the boss is doing it, I need to be able to, I got to outperform the boss, because we don't want the boss outperforming us, right? And so that's how I've always run my business, to where, I like to lead by example. I like to show people, what to do. And then that way, when I ask them to do it, I can help motivate them. I can help guide them. I can also understand what they're trying to do.
So was that certification an Agile related certification? So it's funny because when I first heard about you, it was about your personal reputation in Agile work for the government. So so to hear that story, that ties. That's all. That's really interesting. Do you have any particular? Well, I guess your strategy is to lead by example, but there must be times when you can't. I mean, you're not I don't know what you are. There's something that you're not. Like I'm a history major. I'm not a developer. I'm never going to lead my chief engineer or something like that. So when you don't have the direct lead by example opportunity, do you have any particular strategies that you use in running your business?
Yeah, so you have to find good people, right? I've been blessed. I've been able to find some really good leadership, right? And I had to go through a lot of people, but really have a solid leadership team. And I tell people to this day, I don't develop anymore, right? I taught myself early on, but I was really good at going to get business and all of those different type things. So then finding someone technically that can help continue to do, my vision at that optimal level. So my current leadership, from a technology perspective, I really, really lean on those guys, right? Because I come and say, hey, if you want me to, I can try to jump in and program again, but I don't think you want me to do that, right? And they're always like, boss, we got you on this side, right? You just go win contracts, right? And so finding that the good people and developing them and supporting them to be able to grow, and what I always say, and helping support them as if the CEO is right there with them when you're not, has been very critical for us to continue our success.
So here's a kind of introspective question then. Are there particular leadership challenges, I mean, none of us are perfect, that you have, or that you think your people would say, well, this isn't as good a thing? And how do you address whatever that is. Do you know what I mean? Like what's your,
Yeah.
what's,
Yeah. Yeah. I have very,
it's like that dumb interview question, right? It's like that dumb interview question, like, what are your weaknesses? And you say, well, my weaknesses are I don't have any weaknesses. Well, okay, well, I'm interested in something real, you know?
yeah. No, I think my people would say that, I have very, very high expectations. I put high expectations on myself, right? And so sometimes putting those same expectations on people may not always be realistic. But the one thing that I've always done with my people is I've been very honest and very transparent, right? Because I tell them you may not achieve the level that I want you to achieve, but just try because I know my expectations are high, but they're only high for a reason. Because to me, what I've always seen in business, even in the corporate world, if you set low expectations, you're going to get low expectations, right? So I've always been, let's shoot for the sky and let's see where we land, because we're all human beings. We can always get better and different things like that. But I've been that way, and I've had people who even have left the company and they'll come back and say, I appreciate you pushing me. I never knew I had it in myself. And I'm over here doing some amazing things. And I wouldn't have never been able to do that if you never pushed me, and you've pushed me like no one has ever pushed me before. So those type of things, they make you, honestly, as a CEO and an entrepreneur, sometimes when I get messages like that, I sit back and I'm like, damn, that's deep, you know? And what you're doing is worth it. But at the time, some people, not everybody's going to like you, because if you have high expectations, sometimes people don't like that. But when I get stuff like that, I'm just like, man, that's why I do what I do.
Sounds like that's a point of satisfaction. So
Yeah.
I would say to anybody watching this video, you're the owner or president or whoever of your company isn't beyond needing a little reinforcement too, right? So it really means a lot when you get whatever your personal satisfaction is like that comes from. It's nice to hear. That's really good.
Yeah. And another thing I tell you though, but I tell my people, I don't hire yes people. I want people to push back on me, right? Because I'm not perfect. And so, my leaders, they'll come back and push back on me. Well, what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And I'm like, oh, wow, thank you. I never thought about it from that perspective. And so that I think as a leader as well, you have to have an open mind. Yes, we're very smart, and I'll be honest, I don't think I have many weaknesses, right? And because I think as a true entrepreneur, you have to think that way. You really got to be like really focused and everything, right? But to be able to accept feedback and those different type things, I think that's a great quality of a leader as well, because that's your character to say, hey, I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's an interesting comment. Like, you said, I don't think I have that many weaknesses, but as an entrepreneur in particular, you have to think that way. I think that's deep. You know what I mean? Like you have to be open. It's a trick, right? Be open-minded to listen to other people's views and change your mind while still having the confidence to run the business. Because if you huddle in fear in the corner all day long and don't think you can accomplish anything, no one's going to follow you.
No one's going to follow you.
But doing that without coming across as whatever, arrogant or whatever people want to accuse you of, which is why not everyone loves you. I get it. So it brings up the word mentorship or mentor. I'm interested because you're talking about how you're working with your people. Do you have a particular, you may or may not use that word, I don't know, but do you mentor your people, or do you have a mentor? What's your experience been with mentorship in growing your company, one way or the other?
Yeah. So I've had several mentors, and one of my mentors here in San Antonio, his name is Don Mooney, right? And so Don he's in the healthcare space. We're in the IT space. And when I met Don early on, I've known Don now for about 10 years, and I heard about Don and everything, and I was like, oh wow, I really got to meet him, right? And he retired. I think he was retired Army colonel and stuff like that, right? And when I met Don, just based on the name and you hear people talking in the community about the person, I was like so fascinated, right? And then seeing what he had did with his business, and he was so welcoming to bring me in and start telling me and mentoring and everything. And that just meant the world to me, right? And we then created a down the road, But the one thing Don taught me though early on, he says, Tim, he said, I'm not going to give you nothing. He said, I'm going to teach you, and then we can go fish together. But if you're looking for a handout, I'm not the one, right? And that always stuck with me because I've never looked for a handout, right? But when he says I can teach you and we can go fish together, and I was like, that's what I'm looking for, right? Because being in the government space and trying to learn how to do it bigger and bigger and bigger, that was fascinating to me. But I'll be honest, he's a mentor to me, but to me, that was like what a big brother would tell you to make sure you're up on your game, right? And I respected that wholeheartedly, right? And that's why we don't do much business together right now, but we still respect each other in the same way. Like I just saw him a couple of days ago, and I probably haven't seen Don maybe about a year and a half, but it was almost like just seeing him, all the time, right?
Right.
And so in my current, and so what that did for me is, hey, I want to be able to mentor my people, right? So I know that I have to mentor my leadership as well to get them to be able to help them achieve their goal and what they're trying to achieve, right? And so, yeah, we definitely have a mentorship, what I always like to say, an open door policy within the company. And I'm always open to mentoring a lot of people, but I take big pride in mentoring my leadership because I want them to be able to grow. I want them to be able to help perform at very, very high levels. And then I think the other piece, like you shared earlier, we work together. Well, we learn. A good entrepreneur, you can learn from anyone, right? And you guys have been a mentor to us and all of these different type things. So I think you come across mentors in so many walks of life, especially when you're running a business. I think the most critical thing is you have to have an open mind to know that somebody may be giving you some good information, and how do you use it, right? You may not use it today, but I always like to tell people is if you just put that nugget in your back pocket, and if you listen to people, you don't know when you may use that down the road. And I would be like, damn, I got that from Bill just hanging out at a basketball game. And that's with some knowledge that I didn't even have, So right. I'm really big on that type of mentorship.
We did sit there for 3 hours and not even watch the game. It was like, oh, the game's over? What? Like we were just talking. That was funny. And I like basketball. Well, that's really good. So what I take from that, what's really interesting is kind of like the world is your mentor. And I love that. Do you have an approach to calculating risk versus rewards based on the things you do, the decisions you make? And I guess it could be anything from, are we going to partner with this company? Are we going to bid this contract? Or am I going to make a decision in delivery that could get us, in trouble?
Whatever that might be.
Yeah, there is some risk reward calculations I would say there, but I'll be honest. I think, we've tried, we do have a process that we have on paper, and sometimes we go through to determine, feasibility, the amount of effort we're going to put into something. Time is money, right? How much it's going to cost us? What is the benefit hypothesis on the other end? Whether
didn't you build was this that tool? Didn't you build a tool for this process, or was that another thing?
Yeah, that was something else.
Oh, something else. Okay.
Yeah. And so we look at it, but I'll be honest. So I like to make quick decisions based on my gut as well, because it's based on relationships, right? And when you know a lot of people in the space that we're in, you kind of already know who's good people and who you want to partner with and who you want to work with and different things like that. I'm big on it's a benefit hypothesis, right? I'm really big on that, right? And what I mean by that is you never know, right? Hey, let's try it. If it works out, great. We can do bigger stuff. If it doesn't work out, at least we learned something, right? And I think it's still that kind of agile approach in my mindset to where, we can do something small and incremental, quick, and let's try to validate it. Because I'm just big on, at the end of the day, sometimes what they call it paralysis analysis, you can overanalyze it and all of these different type things and use all these, Excel spreadsheets and all of those things. But as an entrepreneur, I think you got to make quick decisions, be willing to try things, be willing to fail, be willing to learn. And I tell people all the time, we've won a lot of contracts, but we've lost a lot of contracts too. And it's because you gotta play to be in the game. And if you're not in the game, you can't win.
Right.
Yeah. So that's
So
how
you mentioned relationships. Do you think of, I'm sure, I know we both agree relationships is probably, we could probably talk for an hour on just that. But with regard to risk, do you see relationships as like a risk mitigation, I guess, at least in part? It seems like a small part of it, but is that how you're referring to relationships in some cases?
Well, in some cases, right? I would say so because I think the other part to relationships is relationships can open doors for you in other areas that you may have not even considered or may not even thought about, right? And so I think you have to, again, the risk here is, okay, well, what if I get into a relationship with this company and it's a bad relationship? But it's almost like dating. And I tell people it's like early on you date people, and then when you win a contract together, it's almost like you're married now.
Right. So we're married in this scenario. Great.
Yeah.
That's not what I wanted to hear today.
But someone told me that early on. It's like, hey, we're going to date to see how we can work together. And then once we're in a contract, it's like we're married now. And I was like, that always stuck with me, right? And so that's kind of how I look at risk reward.
So what's your vision?
Yeah, my vision is I really want to build a brand that's respectable, right? Regardless of what space we're in. And right now we've been very blessed to where our brand, our name, they know that they're getting high quality, I call it products and services, right? Because at the end of the day, that's all you have is your name, right? So my vision has always been when people think of Appddiction, when people think of Tim Porter, man, that's a great company. That's a great person to work for. He's a great leader. They do great products and services, X, Y, and Z. So continuing to build that vision and instill that in all of our team members to build high quality stuff, and then be able to, what I always like to say, have total impact on people and their families. That's the piece to where, I'll be honest, I don't think about it much because as an entrepreneur, I'm not, it's probably bad to say, but I'm not a warm, fuzzy guy. Right. And I'll be honest, the reason why I think I'm not a warm, fuzzy guy is because, as a, we talked about this earlier, as a leader, to me, you have to have some almost outlandish thoughts to be able to lead people, right? And take people to a level that they've never seen, to where they're just like, when do you ever sleep? When do you ever, blah, 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 blah. But we're human just like everybody else, right? But to be able to have that vision and be able to really lead people and lead your customers to where your customers have true faith in saying, hey, we need help with X, Y, and Z, and they trust that you're going to be able to help take them to the next level. I think that takes some very special visionary type of person to be able to do that, right? So from my vision perspective, being able to help change people mindsets in the way that they think about themselves to be able to accomplish anything is the most important part to me. And I've had young, I give you this story that I think really compels my vision, right? So I had these young group of developers, and I never forget when we first won our Kelso One contract. I said, guys, I said, if you listen to what I'm telling you, I'm gonna help take you to new levels, right? And I was like, I know you guys are doing the work, but I need you to have a different mindset going into there, doing this work, X, Y, and Z. And I never forget this young gentleman, James. James, he left the company, but he sent me this long, compelling email, and he talked about how, I've only been, he was a young guy, and I've only been working for you for like the last 3 years. And he's like, I never in my wildest dreams think I would be able to buy a house being this young, but you pushed me, you took care of me, you paid me well, and you helped me succeed. And now I'm able to buy a house, and he talked about, how proud his family was. And stuff like that. I think that's why I don't do the warm fuzzy feeling stuff, right? Because stuff like that gets to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you're a human being.
I see a trend here. It's interesting. You said earlier, I don't think I have a lot of weaknesses because I have to believe I don't have a lot of weaknesses in order to execute the mission. And now you're saying I'm not warm and fuzzy because I have to be able to, lead and have a vision in that direction without getting distracted. And I would suggest to you that we have a relationship and you're a total softie, hands down. So it's just, you can't always believe that you are, but I'm glad that you are, I think it's a little bit of both. I get it. It's whatever, this yin and yang thing. Do you see yourself as a leader in our industry, and in what way, if you do? Or do you try?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't really try. I
Yeah.
I don't see myself as a leader. I see myself as a contributing individual, contributing company, right? But I'll be honest. A lot of times I like to stay focused and stay in my lane. And indirectly, I think you can influence people. But I'm really big on, if you focus on you, you can change the world. But a lot of times I think, I don't know, but I would think that if I was really trying to be this huge, impactful leader in the industry, then it could distract me, right? Because there's a lot of noise out there, different things like that. And I tell my people all the time, I'm like, guys, just focus on us. If you focus on you, you focus on what we're doing, do the best that you can, there may be ripple effects to where people see us as industry leaders, to even though we didn't even try to be, right? So I've heard that people kind of share that, man, you guys are, leaders in the industry when it came to agile and different things like that. But that's not what we kind of started out trying to do. We just wanted to focus on our capabilities and building something strong, and then it has kind of ripples effect.
Well, it's interesting. As you talked, I realized, I think you're right. I think you focus on what you're doing. I don't know who successfully goes with an intent of leading the industry. There are those people. I don't know that you and I are them, but I tricked you into it right now. This whole discussion, other people will see. And maybe if we do another thing on another topic, then that's that's focusing on what you're doing and being a leader in the industry. People are listening to what you have to say. And like you just said, the world is your mentor. So this is part of that. People can listen to it. So let's just move on to any advice you have for current business owners, aspiring business owners. What kind of things would you say based on your experience? So how long have you owned your own business now total?
Yeah, total for 15 years.
15 years. So there is some pain and suffering, I know, involved in that. So and good things. So what kind of advice would you have for folks
Yeah,
that are starting out?
I would say the advice is you really have to understand it takes a lot of time to build something successful, right? It's never done overnight, right? Um, I pay attention to a lot of other successful entrepreneurs. You know, I used to love watching Shark Tank only just to hear the pitches and things like that motivate me. And there's a lot of, successful entrepreneurs in the world, but every single time I heard someone say something, it was never a shortcut. It was always you had to put in the time, right? And so, you know, be able to have that and then know that, at the end of the day, and I honestly was telling my son this just the other day, trying to get him to understand how much effort he has to put into developing his skill set from any sport to what I had to do as a successful entrepreneur. And I'm like, dude, at the end of the day, I told him, I missed a lot of birthdays. I missed a lot of anniversaries. I missed a lot of just going out and hanging out. And at the time, people was like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? You're crazy, blah, 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 right? And I look but now I'm able to help a lot of people because of what I gave up early on, right? And so I was getting him to understand that. So any aspiring entrepreneur, they're really going to have to understand that you're going to give up a lot of weekends. You're going to give up a lot of nights. You're going to give up a lot of birthdays in order to build something successful and something sustainable, right? And so that's been, that's my call to action on anyone. And then have the investment, right? You got to have money and you got to be willing to take risks. We've been talking about risks, right? I tell you a story that not many people know about me. Probably only, I would think 3 or 4 people know this.
You do realize we're recording this, right? So now everyone's going to know. Okay, just making sure.
No, and because I really think it speaks to what you got to do if you really want to build something, right? So I sold my house because I really believed in myself, right? And I lived out of my office for like 2 years and no one ever knew. No one. Why? Because I would be the first one there every single morning, right? And here I am in the bathroom washing up 5 o'clock in the morning. So when people start coming in 7:38, they think that, wow, the boss, he just got here. No, he stayed here, right?
Wow.
And when people would leave in the evening, most of the time I stayed and worked to 7, 8, 9, and 10 o'clock at night, right? And so, and I tell my son that, and he was like, look at me like, what? I'm like, if you believe in yourself, you do those kind of crazy things in order to make it work. And I'm like, it worked, right? And then the other, I think, aspiring thing entrepreneurs need to understand that I went through is when I started hiring people, right? You got to pay people, right? And I'm not this big religious guy, but I never forget almost every other Friday, that Thursday night, I'm like, oh crap, I got payroll coming up. What am I going to do? These payments aren't coming in fast enough, right? And at that time, I didn't have a line of credit. And I'm like, shit, it's Thursday night. I got to go to the post office. Man, that check needs to be there. Every single time it was there, Bill.
You're writing the check to make payroll from the proceeds of the house to keep it going.
Yep.
That's hardcore.
And every single time it was there. And I tell people, I'm like, man, and then when when you got the check start rolling in from your customers on time and stuff like that, It takes a lot of stress off of you. But
Mhm.
early on, as an entrepreneur, those are the type of things that you got to think about, especially when you're starting to hire people, because you got to pay people. And I didn't pay myself for the first 2 years I was in business because I was still teaching,
Right.
but I was paying everybody else.
Right. Yep.
And the moment that I started paying myself was because people was telling me, they're like, "Sir, you're pretty angry." It dawned on me it was because I'm winning these contracts and I see how much money we're making, but I never paid myself. And the moment that one of my mentors told me, "You need to leave the university, you need to focus on your company, and you need to pay yourself," that's when we started blowing up. And I tell people the reason why I didn't do that so quickly, because over here, I knew I was getting this paycheck every 2 weeks, right?
Right.
It's
Right.
it's there's comfort in this. But when you are responsible for yourself as well, that's a whole different ball game.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. That's very authentic. And I take from the end of that, what an important role for the mentor to get you off the dime, and then how scary that is to not have that check coming in from whatever
Yeah.
the source, right? It's
Yeah.
hard to give up that last thing and then go all in. So
Yes. Yeah.
good for you for doing it. So you must then, I'll transition a little. Given that you did all that, tweaked every dollar, invested what you had in order to make that go forward and work. Some of this government efficiency stuff that's going on, overall has got to, ring true to you, whether you agree to it all. There must be some element of it. You're like, well, to waste money when I'm sitting here scraping, I'd like a grant for a couple $100,000. I could have used that to start my business. So how do you feel about what's going on in the government right now? And I really am not talking politics.
Yeah.
I know it's political. It's not really that. It's not Trump or anything. I'm just kind of curious about the efficiency and the cuts to our federal government and how it impacts you and what you think about it.
Yeah, no, I think being efficient, I think everybody wants to be efficient, right? And I'll be honest, I was reading this article where they talked about the government is paying for X number of Adobe licenses, blah blah. And that rung true to me, because I'm like, I know I'm paying for some Adobe licenses right now that I'm probably not using, right? And I'm like, shit, I need to go look at those. How many licenses? Because what happens with attrition and people leave and you buy these licenses, and sometimes you forget and you get busy and all that stuff, right? So right now,
but when you and I do
think,
it, which is true, right? When you and I do it, it's 4 licenses. When the government does it, how many was it? Do you remember? I saw that article.
Yeah, it was like
hundreds of thousands.
Hundreds of thousands.
And you're like, oh my God. And that starts to become real money at some point.
And it becomes real money. So that's why I think focusing on efficiency and cutting is very good. I would just like to see that the cutting is more strategic, right? Because there is real people out there whose lives are being impacted. But at the end of the day, to me, it's no different than what we do in our business, right? We have to be efficient as well as a small entrepreneur type small business, and we have to be nimble. And I think that what the goal that they're trying to achieve is hopefully to get the government to be more nimble and be more responsive and those different type things. And it reminds me of what we teach in our agile classes is, you Agile started as this small, nimble, quick, responsive Agile team. And as it gets bigger and bigger, you throw all these policies and all of this stuff on it, then it just starts to sink, because you can't make a fast decision anymore because you got to go through 20 different people, when the whole goal was it started to where you could make decisions like that. So I think that's what they're trying to revert the government back to be able to be more responsive, efficient, quick, all of those different type things. So that's how I'm looking at this. And I think go back to SWOT analysis, right? Yes, there's some perceived threats out there, but you can turn a threat into an opportunity. And to me, I've
So you're
never,
talking strengths, weaknesses, opportunities,
yeah,
threats.
strength,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah. And I'll be honest, I've been blessed. I've never been laid off in my life, so I don't know what that feels like. But I have been to a point to where I saw the writing on the wall because a lot of consolidation of network servers and all of that stuff in the newspaper industry. And I got out early because I told myself I gotta do something different. Because if I don't do something different, the writing is on the wall. I'm gonna get laid off. So I think right now, with everything that the people is going through, you know, I think you can reinvent yourself. You can teach yourself new skills. There's a lot of different opportunities out there, whether someone may believe that or not. But I think that's the benefit if people kept an open mind to, everything that's happening today. And losing your job, I get it, but it's not the end of the world. But you got to learn something new. And I don't know if that's just an entrepreneur mindset. I don't know. Sometimes employees may not have that mindset, but I'm big on, I think the optimal role that the government is trying to play right now is going to help force people to get outside of their comfort zone and not just be there and stay stagnant, if that makes sense.
So what do you think is the role of government contractors in this whole Doge government efficiency kick that we're on?
Yeah. So I've been thinking through this, right? And I think our role is we can bring a lot of innovation to the table very quickly, right? Because we are a partner to our government partners and our government agencies, right? And to be able to bring some of the latest technologies and the way forward and all of these things, because I'm gonna use an example, going to the cloud, right? We can help the government save a lot of money by going to the cloud, doing things in the cloud, all of those different type things, because we have our expertise in that. But also when we're calculating, how we can help reduce those costs by turning off servers now overnight and all of those different type things. I think there's some real opportunities there that I don't know if every government agency is doing that, but there's some true savings. Yeah, you got to pay us as contractors to bring our expertise in, but we also can bring a lot of expertise in areas like that to be able to help save on those different type of costs that historically just continue to run 365 days a year nonstop. We can be smarter now about that.
Right. So last question then. Our king for a day, what would you prioritize with regard to efficiency or savings or cuts or whatever in the government?
Wow, that's a good
And
question.
by the way, it could be anything, right? You could name an agency, but you could also name technology. Like anything's on the table.
Yeah.
What are the priorities that you'd focus on if you were the boss?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I've never thought about it, but if I was the boss for a day, knowing what I know in the field that I'm in, I would focus on technology, right? I would focus on technology. I think the focus on AI is important, right? And I would focus on how can you help build stronger, faster, more durable IT systems. Because think about it, the world we live in today, most people have 3 and 4 devices. It's not going backwards.
No.
And people is coming to the services on their phone more than probably 80%, right? So focusing on a lot of those departments and programs to say we want to give, the American public the best service from a technology perspective. I think those would be some of the things that I would be focusing on and trying to find ways to where, like I'm gonna give you a prime example, right? I never forget this. We had one of our government customers came to us and said, "Hey, we're finally going to get off IE." And I'm like, "Whoa, great." Right?
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm thinking, "Oh, this is getting ready to happen fast." It's like, "Oh, no. It's not for another 3 years though." What? You made it sound like it's going to be very quick, right? So I know that the government still pay for support on things that are no longer supported because they just don't want to get off of it that quick, right? So I think there's a lot of efficiency in things like that, because I've also heard like the government pays a whole lot of money for outdated Oracle support. I mean, like in the millions and billions of dollars and different things like that, because not everybody get their things updated and upgraded as appropriately. So that's why I was focused on the technology piece. And I think there could be efficiencies if you brought all the modern technology in and got rid of some of this antiquated technology that's unsupported, that you still got to pay Microsoft and some of these companies billions of dollars to still support it though, and nobody's using it.
Interesting. I'll tell you what. So we'll have to have a conversation about our companies and this thing, because like we're pretty efficient, but even I've noticed as we've grown, it takes a little disruption to continually bang away at efficiency. I can't even it's like trying to comprehend what $1 billion even is.
Yeah.
I can't comprehend how the federal government can be efficient. Like when I have issues with my own little company sometimes, you know what I mean? Like so God bless them trying to do it, you know?
Yeah.
Hey, thank you so much for taking the time. I hope we can do this again sometime, pick some other topics.
Yeah, absolutely. No, this has been great.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Basically, this is the way we'd talk anyway, right? So it was good. You were very authentic, which I appreciate. It was good. Some good stories. And now I know I'm going to tell everybody you were living in your attic at the office. So crazy. All right, man.
I appreciate the opportunity.
You bet. It was great to have you.
I'm Bill Williams, and I'm Failing Daily. Go to failingdaily.com, check out our content, or if you want to connect on YouTube, LinkedIn, maybe a little Twitter.